once you kind of have a good idea on why you're doing this, because it can really change like what you want to focus on first or how you want to iterate. The next thing is a really important thing to do, but at the same time, I'll say you want to be pragmatic about it. Don't think that you have to spend a year doing this. Is to come up with a good roadmap, a good strategy, so that you know, hey, we want to do this first and this second and this third. And the point of this is really to think about, as I said, your strengths and weaknesses as an organization and what you're going to do to support your goals, and how you want to organize your data governance initiative so that you're doing things that add value and give you a good return on the investment of a data governance initiative towards what you're trying to accomplish. So the pragmatic, I always like this little cartoon, the optimist half full, the pessimist half empty, and the pragmatist has already drunk the wine. So that's what you want to do. Stick a pragmatic approach where you can just get started and go and roll, but where you can get buy-in and you're focusing on the things that matter. So why is it important to build this roadmap? Well, part of it is, as I mentioned before, that if you have sort of 12 people in the room and you're talking about data governance, you might get 12 different opinions on what it means, like what you're talking about. So you want to have a plan and a roadmap that articulates, like, well, what are we going to do? We're going to do this first and this second and this third, and this is how we're going to do it. So people know that, what their goals are, what their interests are going to be handled. Maybe it's not at the beginning, but they know that it's part of the plan or they've been heard. And data governance, frankly, it's just not, it's very broadly defined and not well understood. So it's, are we talking about quality? Are we talking about policy? Are we talking about security? Are we talking about glossary and knowledge? And kind of the biggest divide in thinking about governance or data intelligence is people who think that data governance is around controlling and limiting what people do with your data versus people who think that data governance is about expanding and improving what people do with your data. And both of those things can be true, but it's like if you have a well understood data and the policy and security parts are well understood, you can create appropriate use of the data if you're doing it more. So, but those are the two challenges. Like, some people will really think, hey, we're doing this to really protect our data and lock things down, as opposed to people who think, hey, we're doing this so we can use our data more. So really make sure that you're clear about what those goals are and how your plan and roadmap will do that. The other thing is that, you have to understand that data governance does require people to contribute work and time, and therefore you need to have their buy-in. Right? So you can't just sort of expect people to contribute without knowing why they're doing it. Also, it is very difficult, and this is our experience working with many organizations, to tackle all the areas of data governance and data intelligence at once. So you need to have a strategy that's feasible, that plays in your organization's strength, that matches your priorities, and then communicates those future priorities. So the people who really want to focus on security, but you're not doing that right now, know that that's going to come later. So you want to start small and expand out towards those greater goals. But you have to have a plan that you can communicate around that people buy into. So in order to create that roadmap, we sort of recommend this little strategy. You can take it however you want, but start with a very limited set of data governance leadership champions, people who are going to come up with the strategy, but don't make it too big that it's going to take forever to create this plan. Do a relatively quick assessment of your current data governance, where you are, what you have. Then come up, and part of that is also the documenting your goals and everything, and then work on the recommendations based on where you're trying to get to. Once you have the sort of an aspirational list of recommendations that you want to do, then go through a prioritizing and scoping step to figure out how to iterate on that, which we'll talk about in a second. And then take that prioritize and scope thing and put this into a data governance roadmap, which is this plan. So an actual a plan that has actionable things to be done, and then come up with something that you're going to do right away, some sort of actionable pilot project that you're going to work on. It's not just theoretical. And then be sure to kind of continue to measure your progress against these the overall roadmap, and figure out to say, hey, we want to accomplish this within 6 months, and if we do that, we should be able to have more people doing self-service reporting than we had before. So there's some sort of metric that you can kind of measure. And it can be hard to do that, but it's really helpful in terms of ongoing buy-in, and also just keep sort of circling back to why are we doing this in the first place, and do we have ways to measure that we're getting those goals that we want to. So if you're doing this, so what actually is in the roadmap document? So it should be sort of a high-level summary with, kind of 1 or 2 pages followed by lower-level details of each one of both the current state assessment and then each one of the recommendations that you're going to execute on. So the high-level one will have sort of your key goals and that we talked about the reasons that you're doing this from the beginning, actionable goals, and then the list of best practices that you're going to do either at a data governance framework or process stage or the various content. So hey, we're going to do a data system inventory and a business glossary and a report catalog, and we're going to set up a very simple initial set of data stewards and have a data request process, whatever these things are, that you're going to do. And you kind of want, again, you want to list them out for all the ones that you're going to do, but have them prioritized. So then have a schedule for that implementation. How you're going to iterate. We're going to do this first, this second, this third, or these 3 here. And then have a rollout plan for each one that talks about, how you're going to, are you going to do this across the whole company, or are you just going to work in some one small area or one set of tools? And then again, have that immediate pilot. So the whole first section here should be about 2 or 3 pages, and the rest can be 1 or 2 pages each. You're not talking about a million pages of documents. It is useful to do this current state assessment to talk about what the sort of issues and challenges and themes are of how people aren't successfully using data, or how people are successfully using data in your organization that you want, the problems you need to fix, or things are going well that you want to expand on. Understand your existing data governance assets, and then document your sort of data environment. What are the data systems, what are the reporting tools and systems, because that'll help you put together your roadmap strategy to say, what do we need to apply this to now, and what reports do we need to document, and also to realize if you've got some things that are more tools or systems that are more difficult to get metadata out of or to interact with. And then also your organizational resources. Where do you have defined already stewards or people who are bought in or report writers or whatever, and where maybe you have gaps in those needs, or that you need things. And that current state assessment will then lead into this, your plan to fill those goals or to build on that. So each one of these best practices, you'll have a plan for on how you're going to implement it. What are you going to do first and second within each one of these plans, and how you'll measure if it's successful. So the big thing around this with this plan is to come up with your strategy for a prioritization strategy and iteration. So if you sort of assume, hey, we're not going to do everything right at once, we say, well, how do we want to iterate on doing this? So you might decide that you're going to iterate on the scope of the framework. So do you want to just have like a minimally viable framework where maybe you don't have any real data stewards, you just have some generic triage kind of role here, or you're just focusing on getting content in without a lot of approvals? Or are you going to really try to have well-defined roles and tools and workflow, and just figure out where you're going to fall in that and how you're going to grow into that? It does make sense in some ways to iterate on the framework unless you already have a robust data governance structure and committees and roles in your organization, to allow yourself to grow into those roles as you go. Other ways you might do this is to iterate on content. So this is something that's pretty obvious, like, oh, we're going to start with glossary and data system and a data catalog, and that's what we're going to do first, and then in 6 months we're going to do data quality or whatever. So that's another approach. Now sometimes you may, instead of doing that, you say, hey, we're going to do like all of these things at once, but we're only going to do it within a small part of our organization and roll out there. So are you going to maybe iterate on the organizational scope? So we're going to do all these things, but just start with the finance team or the enrollment team or the sales team or something, or some combination. Like, you get very pragmatic. Say, we're just going to focus on the glossary and the data system, and we're going to do that in 1 or 2 teams. Then even within that, you can say, hey, we might have 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 or 100 different data systems and tools in that group. We're just going to focus on these 2 critical ones now, and then definitely plan to grow into them. And then even within that, say, we only have buy-in from a couple people, or we're going to have one designated kind of steward or contact within this group, and then we'll pull in collaborators as we need to. The whole point of this is not to this is the data systems and tools, and then the stakeholder things. The whole point of this is that if you wait until you're ready to do all these things at once across your entire organization, across every data system and tools, across all of your stakeholders, and to get started, you never will. So put together that plan and then figure out, how do we iterate? But the other thing to think about this is, if you do say, hey, we're going to do this organizationally, you need to sort of have a plan for then how you expand that to the next phase, right? So it's sometimes what the problem that people do is they set out and start with a small group and then never have a strategy to take it to the next level. So your plan should include, how we're going to then extend it from there. So lastly, even within that overall the set of iterations, if you're saying, hey, we're going to do glossary and we're going to do this, or we're going to do a report catalog in this one area, the next thing you talk about is how do you prioritize the content within that category? So if this particular department has 100 legacy reports, you probably aren't going to be successful asking them to document all 100 of those legacy reports and curate them, for the report catalog, if that's important. So you might say, hey, we're going to focus on 5 of those, get those working, and then prioritize the rest of them based on questions or needs, and that sort of help desk approach. So all of these things, again, we talk about in the bigger session best practice we did on building your roadmap. We kind of reiterate this here, but the whole point of this is to, however you want to tackle it, is to come up with this plan that works with your system, that is set yourself up for success, but is focused on solving the problems that you have, and to write this up in a way that you can communicate to both the leadership who are making decisions and to the people who have to do the work, so they know what they're doing and why they're doing it.